Foolish human, you will know suffering once I unleash my imagined dragons.
No, don't do it, Rynn.
What? What's an imagined dragon?
Imagine dragging these nuts across your face.
I told you not to do it, Rynn.
Drakan, The Ancient's Gates is a third-person action RPG developed by Surreal Software and released exclusively on the PS2 in 2002, where it found moderate success. It was only the second game from the studio, who would go on to make the much better-known games The Suffering and its sequel The Suffering Ties That Bind. They would then be acquired by Midway Games and bought by Warner Bros. In 2009, where they presumably would have worked on the Middle-earth games, which I enjoyed, before being chained to the millstone that is the Wonder Woman game and dragged into the abyss and forgotten. It's allegedly been in development since 2017. None of that really matters, of course. I just think it's interesting in a morbid sort of way to see how a team can make something of their own, be successful, and the reward for all that hard work is to be sold to a new corporate master and forced to pump out soulless garbage to a fan base blinded by nostalgia. Hey, what the fuck? Bethesda, who let you in here? Anyway, like I said, The Ancient's Gates is the sequel to the PC-exclusive Drakan, Order of the Flame, released in 1999. I haven't played it, but if you wanted to, it is considered abandonware. That means you can't buy it anywhere, but you can download it for free, and there's probably a patch or a guide you can use to play it. From this point on, when I say Drakan, I mean The Ancient's Gates, and when I say Drakan, I mean Drakan because that's how I thought it was pronounced 10 minutes before recording this. As a side note within a side note, if you notice in my recording that I'm playing with cheat codes, that is because I am what the doctors call a fucking moron. I didn't record my first playthrough, so I had to go through the game again for the video. The game's like 20 hours long, and I did the first run legit, but I really don't have time to do another. Not that I give a shit if you use cheat codes, I absolutely do if I think it's fun, but in something like this, if I'm going to be criticizing the combat system in a game, I think it's important to establish that I did engage in that combat system the way it was intended to be played. Also, I want to warn you about a problem I ran into that I haven't seen in any other emulated game. If you have a quick save and then you save your game and you load the quick save that is before your normal save, it'll corrupt your memory card and make it so that you can't save anymore. The only way to fix it is to hope that you have a save before that save state, or you have to completely restart the game. You can't even just create a new virtual memory card because the game won't let you make a new save unless the first card is in the second slot. I got around that by always quick saving right after I did a normal save. And I had to say save way too many times in that paragraph. If I had to distill my experience with this game into one sentence, it would be, Drakan is somewhere between the first Fable and Morrowind. For some of you, that sounds awesome, and I agree, but it might be giving this game a little bit too much credit. This is kind of the great value version of that idea. It's an RC Cola RPG. In Drakan, you play as Rynn, an all-around monster-slaying lady boss. She reminds me of Lara Croft, partially in the way she flips around and partially in her personality. I wish she had dual pistols, but swords and magic are fine too, and that's good because the majority of your time in this game will be spent in combat. She also has a dragon, and is currently the only known dragon rider, which would be a decent advantage if she didn't spend most of the game in caves. Arokh flies like a helicopter and has several different ways to kill a man, also like a helicopter. When you're forced to fight in the air, it's mostly a matter of locking on and going in a circle while you hold the attack button. That's about as fun as it sounds, but at least the air combat sections aren't very long, and you only have to fight a few enemies at a time. Otherwise, it'd be fucking miserable. This is foreshadowing. I'm a good rider. For a PS2 game, it looks okay. The emulator upscaling does help a lot. I like the weather effects, the spells look decent, and there are even some real-time shadows in there that you can watch flip around based on the closest light source. One thing that didn't bother me, but that my wife and I did make fun of a lot, is the speaking animations. Drakan is in this weird middle ground where they couldn't really move lips yet, so everyone just kind of flaps their jaw like a puppet. I've never really cared when a character spoke in a game without moving their mouths. This is probably worse, but it's whatever. The voice acting is decent. Rynn has attitude without being too edgy.
I'm afraid I'll need you to journey into the swamps for me, Rynn.
That's a fine greeting. If you want me to go slogging around in the muck, at least tell me what for.
My apologies. The gates of the eye were sealed by magic. The spell to unlock them was bound in a rune of power and hidden away.
I thought Arokh sounded a lot like the brutes from Halo.
Them? What about us? My belly aches, and his flesh is seared just the way I like it.
It turns out his voice actor did work on Halo, but not as a brute. He played Sergeant Johnson.
Folks need heroes, Chief, to give them hope. So smile, would ya? Well, we still got something to smile about.
The music is nice and orchestral. It feels appropriate to the high fantasy theme, even though it is kinda generic. Overall, I think Drakan is a good game. A game that I would recommend. Though, like your mom, that good has a big old butt hanging off of it. I think there are two major shortcomings that keep Drakan from reaching the level of more classic games from around the same time. Keep in mind, this was the same year as Morrowind and Kingdom Hearts, 1 year after Final Fantasy X, and 1 year before Drakengard, though they're not related. Those shortcomings are named story pacing and combat progression. In the first, maybe 5 hours, I thought Drakan was awesome. One of those hidden gems that the internet never stops talking about. After that, though, things started to get stale. To be totally fair, when I say it started to get stale, what I mean is something that for me was looking like it could have been a 10 out of 10 started to droop into that 7 or 8 out of 10 range. I was still having fun, and I do like a 7 out of 10 game. The story slowed to a crawl, and I realized I was doing a lot of fetch quests. If this were an Elder Scrolls game, opening the portals might be like a third of the main story, but in Drakan, it's the whole shebang. And you never even see the last gate. It's opened off screen after you finish the final boss, and then a slideshow cutscene plays. It's a dead simple quest, and it doesn't feel like it was intended to be a whole story. It feels like a middle that's missing a beginning and an end, with padding in it to stretch things out. The maps are really big, so you can enjoy flying around, but aside from a few dungeons and the odd secret, they're pretty much empty. The combat never really felt like it got out of second gear either, though you might enjoy that more with a different build. Enemies hit pretty hard, they have a lot of health, and there are a lot of them. They're usually faster than you, and the archers have head-seeking missiles. You can often run past them, but if it's your first playthrough, you won't know where to go anyway, and I don't want to have to run past enemies. I like killing things in games. There is no health regeneration, and you can't get a healing spell until you're at least level 4 in magic. Otherwise, you're limited to potions you find or buy. This doesn't make the game hard, but it does make it kinda tedious. Even if you do get that healing spell, it'll take your entire mana pool to get your health back up from low, and if you're a magic user, then you'll have to wait for it to recharge because spells take a lot of mana, and you don't get more as you level up. The leveling in this game is kinda strange too. You gain experience through combat, of course, but the game doesn't tell you that the maximum level is 12, and each skill can only go up to 8. I built a primarily magic-based character on my playthrough, and it was fine, but on top of the mana being limited, it also doesn't recharge when you're using a constant ability like Slow Time. As far as I know, you can't drop a spell once it's active, so you have to wait up to 90 seconds for it to end, and then wait for your mana to recharge after that. You have to stand still when you equip or cast a spell, and they don't do much damage, so it takes basically your whole blue ball to finish a single enemy. The most useful offensive spell is the Fireball, and it has an AoE that hurts Rynn if they're too close. So long story short, after I already told you the long story, I really don't recommend the full caster. On the other hand, if you want to be completely overpowered, you could take a few levels of magic and then go entirely into melee. At low level, the Fear spell will paralyze everything close to you, but later in the game, most enemies do become immune to it. However, much like real life, nothing in the game is immune to the flow of time, and slow will carry you all the way through to the credits. The downside of a foo strategy, though, is that it's boring, and this is no exception, so follow your heart. In Fable, combat was enjoyable because as you leveled up, you became superhuman, swinging a massive hammer or blowing up everything around you while wrapped in an impenetrable arcane shield. In Morrowind, once you got through the early hours, you could build your character a dozen different ways and make a spell of fuck your whole town, but Drakan's combat system never gets too far from where it starts. The redeeming strength of the game is Rynn, and to a lesser extent Arokh. In video games, like basically all media, there are relatively few examples of good female protagonists. Of course, she still suffers from over-sexualization, and her enemies keep making it about the fact that she is a girl for some reason. It's really strange that the bad guys can't just go, "You dare defy me, I'll kill you!" But instead they gotta say some shit like, "You'll never win, you beautiful slut!" Also, I know it's a trope in fantasy media for women to wear shitty armor, but do you know how painful it would be to wear chainmail like this? It'd be like you were wearing a cheese grater for a shirt. Why doesn't she have anything under it? This is 3 pink pixels away from getting me in trouble with YouTube. When it comes to her words and actions, though, I like her. She's the first Dragon Knight in 600 years, and she doesn't need to take shit from anybody, but she still helps the helpless, and she's not a miserable jerk for no reason. Nice job, early 2000s game developers. You fucked up less than I expected. That's what I call progress. I like Arokh a lot. He has a history and a personality of his own, but he's treated more like transportation. I think maybe they went over his backstory a lot more in the first game and maybe didn't want to hit it again, but obviously they're not even on the same console, so a lot of people never got the chance to play the other one before going into this one. I wish we got to see more interaction between the two of them. Another bit that I thought was neat was the gesture system they used to equip spells. You can pick your spell from a menu, but the game doesn't pause when you're in here, and it's a lot faster to hold the circle button and use the D-pad to draw a pattern. It only works because there are so few spells in the game, and I don't really know why you would ever use most of them, but it plays into that arcane fantasy, and I like it. So I'm about to do the story thing, but first I have to recap Drakan Order of the Flame. It won't take long. Keep in mind, I didn't play it either. I'm just regurgitating Wikipedia at you, like a big boy game reviewer. Rynn's village is destroyed, and her brother is kidnapped and used to resurrect an evil wizard. She makes a pact with Arokh to save her brother, kills the wizard, and the brother falls into a big hole, perfect for that kind of death where they come back later. Alright, we're all caught up. In Drakan, the Ancients' Gates, the world of Drakan has gates that were made by the Ancients. It has also been invaded by a group of large-nippled demons led by the Fairy King Jasad. He is intent on enslaving the world, and it is up to Rynn and Arokh to open the 4 gates and bring back all the dragons. I won't go through every bit of story, but if you care about spoilers, there will be timestamps in the descriptions and chapters in the timeline. After recovering the keycard to open the gates from a nearby swamp, Rynn returns to find a man straight out of the Disney villain playbook. He wouldn't have been more obvious if the screen turned red every time he spoke. We leave the starting zone and get locked into the next area for a while, so buy anything you need, like spell upgrades before you go. We learn that the Wartalks and the other half-men are being used by the Desert Lords, those are the big-nippled demons, to destroy the humans, and then we make it to the frozen north and the first gate. The second gate is behind a magical barrier, and to dispel it we need to find 4 MacGuffins littered around the world in dungeons of varying size and quality. This is the point where, for me, the game started to lose its momentum, and if you don't love this part, there's probably 10 to 15 more hours of it waiting for you. So we're going to speed through this like a school zone. We remove the barrier and go to jail, then we kill the leader of the Northern Half-Men and open the second gate. We return to Surdana to find the castle has been invaded by assassins, and Jafar really was evil the whole time. Who would have guessed? Next we head to the desert and the third gate. It's worth noting that we're almost to the point of no return. You can go back to Surdana now to get the final armor set of the game. It's unbreakable and it looks pretty cool. Or if you're rushing through the game to make a YouTube review, you can forget that and go through the rest of the game in plate mail looking like a fucking dumbass, I guess. Fight the Skeleton King in the Shadow Realm and kill the traitor. Finally, we make our way to the floating city of the Desert Lords. The final map of the game is the open skies of Stratos. And the concept is cool, but it is littered with griffins and dragons, and fighting them really sucks. We kill Goro and get a potion to resist a spell so that we can fly to the home of the Flesh Mage. He's got a cool design and a terrible boss fight. He's completely immortal until you release his soul jar and then it flies around the room until you break it. As a mage, I kept slowing time and eventually managed to get it with a fireball, but I think the lightning spell is the intended way to do this, and you're guaranteed to know it anyway. I just didn't think about it because for the rest of the game, it's a lot less useful than Fireball. No longer insane, but unfortunately dying, the Flesh Mage gives us the staff that will destroy the Pain Golem, and we teleport to the final boss. Rynn just lets Jasad take the staff for some reason, and we easily defeat him, but he floats up out of reach and reactivates the Golem. Now we fight the greatest threat to the realm in an epic showdown oh, no wait, never mind, it's dead. And Jasad, a character that has spent the entire game levitating, loses his balance and falls to the ground to be crushed. With that, the gates are open, the dragons return, and peace is brought to the world. So that's Drakan the Ancients' Gates. It wasn't perfect in my 2024 eyes, but it was still a lot of fun, and it's a shame that we aren't likely to ever see another one. This era of gaming is incredibly comfortable to me, and this game is something that I would have loved when it came out. I still enjoyed it now, over 20 years later. It's not a game that will be for everyone with its padding and clunky combat, but there are some great ideas in here, and riding a dragon will always be awesome. I don't understand why more games haven't figured that out. Some diehard fans still wish for a remake, but I don't really see that happening. I think the best we can hope for is that the indie scene will make it to the point where it's building PS2-like games, and when it does, maybe we can get a spiritual successor. I'd definitely play that. Hey, as always, thanks for watching my video. Thanks a lot to everybody who subscribed. I was honestly thrilled when I got my first subscriber. I don't really know how to feel about having over 50, but that's pretty cool. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully you enjoy it. I think the next one will probably get a little weird, but then I'll get back into the classic stuff. Alright, later.